time to get off the planet, go to its higher heavens, or go elsewhere for your teachings. We don't want that. So as long as we don't want it and we do not channel in those vibrations, we do not raise the frequency to try and match it, we become alien to the planet where we used to be terrestrial. And we bring about the very things that we fear, the anomalies that are coming, the earthquakes, the tidal waves, the hurricanes, the droughts, the cinches, the floods, all because of imbalance. That's nature's way of trying to. Earth is trying to get rid of those who have brought her down and change the vibration back to a complete magnetic frequency, which will put you in tune with the universal prime cosmic creator. If you have pineal pituitary soul spirit affinity. If you don't, it is time to get off the planet, go to its higher heavens, or go elsewhere for your teachings. We don't want that. So as long as we don't want it and we do not channel in those vibrations, we do not raise
good
the
day,
frequency
family.
to
Good day. It's so good to see you.
Where we used to be terrestrial.
I got Devil Blair, Brother
and
Devil
on.
The
very things that we
because
fear.
The earth is.
The anomalies that are coming. The earthquakes.
Fighting back. The earth fighting back.
The hurricanes. The droughts. The cinches.
Earth is trying to get rid of white folks.
Imbalance. That's nature's way of trying to.
Mother Gaia is trying to get rid of the ones that's harming her.
Those who have brought her down and change the vibration back to a complete magnetic frequency, which will put you in tune with the universal prime cosmic creator. If you have pineal pituitary soul spirit affinity. If you don't, it is time to get off the planet, go to its higher heavens, or go elsewhere for your teachings. We don't want that. So as long as we don't want it and we do not channel in those vibrations, we do not raise the frequency to try and match it, we become alien to the planet where we used to be terrestrial. And we bring about the very things that we fear, the anomalies that are coming, the earthquakes, the tidal waves, the hurricanes, the droughts, the cinches, the floods, all because of imbalance. That's nature's way of trying to. Earth is trying to get rid of those who have brought her down and change the vibration back to a complete magnetic frequency, which will put you in tune with the universal prime cosmic creator.
Yep. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. And we can't fight it. We can't get in the way. We better get our asses out the way. This is out of our control. This is out of our control. I don't know what it was that tipped the cosmos off that we need their assistance. It could be that too much trauma has happened to us, the manifestation of the cosmos. It could be that Mother Gaia herself, the earth, has suffered too much trauma. It could be that the cosmos has been penetrated with all of these weapons that they done put up in space, opening up portals and shit, tampering with the weather and stuff. It could be any one of those things that activated the cosmos and Mother Gaia, Mother Earth, to wake up, to activate. It could be any one of them things or even all of those things. Us alone, just us needing their assistance, probably would have activated Mother Gaia, the planet, what Dr. Delbert Blair is talking about. Yeah, us alone probably would have activated it. It probably would have took longer if they didn't have all of these weapons out here in the cosmos, and if they wasn't assaulting and destroying the planet, it probably would have taken longer. I don't know. I just know now, the cosmos is activated and Mother Gaia is activated, y'all. Yep, we got to do everything we can to get on code with Mother Gaia and the cosmos. because it's finna go down. It's finna go down. It's out of our hands now. Yeah, good day. How you doing, Kelvin? It's so good to see you. Yeah, I know. I'm going to read and learn too. I haven't read any of these books. They were just, divine planning by the cosmos. The ancestors want to be remembered. All of us. That's why all of us are here and on other platforms and stuff, because we are part of the cosmos. Everybody is. We all got different duties and different chores, different purposes, but it's all for the same ends. It's all towards the same means. Saving our people, healing our people, awakening our people. We're in a new awakening. Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't even know about the first awakening. But now I'm learning about the first awakening because we're going into a second awakening. We're already in it. Even the animals is waking up. Even I used to say it years ago that the animals gonna start talking and stuff. When I seen that movie, The Zoo, on Netflix, it was a series. Because I stopped looking at it after it went left. I stopped looking at it. But in the beginning of it and stuff, it was showing how the animals started thinking. And they started communicating with each other by thought. They started communicating with each other and stuff. Animals in Africa and in America, all over the world and stuff. People were noticing that their cats and their dogs, and they just started communicating and stuff. And so I don't be joking when I say that when these robot dogs hit the street, that our dogs, y'all dogs and stuff, our cats, I got a cat, they gonna stand up. They gonna go on and stand up. They very well might go ahead and stand up on them two back legs that they got. Some of them might start talking to you. If they do, you better ask them some questions. Ain't no need in us acting like we scared, we terrified, or we gonna faint. Whatever finna be revealed. Because remember, we ain't got no spirit of fear. Remember. Yeah. The Creator didn't give us a spirit of fear. Sure didn't, honey. We can face whatever is finna come. Just prepare for it, like everything else in life. We got to prepare for this. Prepare to keep ourselves safe. Be able to feed ourselves and our babies. Be able to keep them warm and cool in the summertime and stuff. We got to be able to do them things. And we'll be all right. We will be okay. We just got to be able to let our people know that they got to get on code too now. It's going to be difficult for us. It's going to be real difficult because y'all know we ain't really had no loyalty to our people in a long time. It make us feel some type of way when we got to put us first. But you can do it. You can do it. Yeah, you can let your family and your friends and your circle know that it's okay to finally stand up for our people. Everybody. Well, not everybody, but everybody that we be looking at and listening to and learning from. Yeah, they standing up for our people. Let them see them. Let them see us so they can see that it ain't just you and it ain't just me. I think my friends and family think that, that it's just me. But no, it's not just me. Our ancestors have told all of us. They telling them. I don't know why they keep fighting it and stuff. Because it ain't going to do no good. They're going to have to wake up to their purpose, which is liberating our ancestors. We got to liberate our ancestors. We got to save our people. We got to make sure that Black babies are still being born. Now our genetic survival might be at stake. It might be, y'all. I mean, we got so many assaults coming towards us collectively all across the board. It's assaults in every last one of these areas of our life that Neely Fuller was teaching us about. We attacked, we assaulted, we misled in every area of life. So, we're going to have to just face this head on. We're gonna have to face this head on. It's finna be a lot of trial and error. Hell, it's unprecedented for one thing, what we're going through. All of that is unprecedented. Ain't nobody ever been through no futuristic world before. You know, that's gonna be difficult enough for us. We done got ourselves in a hard place. We are. We really between a rock and a hard place. You know, so yeah, we just gonna have to bulldoze our way through, around it, over it, or something. Yep. So we reading tonight, though. Yep, we're gonna read tonight. Oh, and I just want to, let y'all know that I really appreciate y'all. I really appreciate y'all. Our ancestors are so grateful, and they happy. They happy because we waking up and we talking about them. We teaching about them. We finally giving them some attention, and that's all our ancestors want. I know y'all been saying thank you, ancestors. I know you have. I ain't even gonna ask you if you've been doing it. Somebody been saying thank you, ancestors. Somebody, and I know Larry, brother, you said you had, talked to family and stuff, and I didn't ask you what you did, but you sounded like it was positive. The outcome was positive. Let's just not be afraid of us anymore. Let's not act like we are our worst enemy. We know we going through some shit. We know we going through some shit. I just want us to know we got to break the ice first. We got to break the ice first. I don't know how fast you're going to be walking when you ask sister, what's your favorite song? I don't know how fast you're going to be walking. I don't know if you can stop and actually, let it resonate with her that you serious. What's her favorite song? Because we got to break the ice with us. I don't know how else to do it. Feed us. Hell, then we're going to eat and go to sleep. I'm just saying. We got to find constructive ways to break the ice so we can let us know. And it'll resonate that things are different now. Things are different now. So, we on Bolden Unchained. I'm Face the Nation. And we're here to assist Black America. Black America and Black media. I love Black America. I love Black media. I love my ancestors. I love you, my people. I know who I belong to. I know who I belong to. I remember when my grandson told my mom I didn't believe in Jesus Christ. White Jesus, I don't believe in white Jesus. I don't believe white Jesus, Cesario Borgio, Cesare, Cesare, Borgia. That's how he spell his name. And I don't believe he coming back to save Black people. I do not believe if he come back, if it's that white man that come back for y'all, he taking y'all to his daddy behind them pearly white gates. And we already know in this book, in the Black Bible, the man that revived the Ku Klux Klan, William Joseph Simmons, in 1915. He wrote, and he said it, he didn't write this book. Cameron McWhirter wrote this book. But William Joseph Simmons, he revived the Ku Klux Klan, and he said, them his words, that he revived the Klan because he had a spiritual vision of road horsemen galloping in the sky. So, we got some thinking to do, some critical thinking to do. We ain't really been able and been comfortable critically thinking about us. We could critically think about other stuff, and that's fine. We could do that. But when it comes to us, we feel a fear and anxiety. And just push through it. Just push through it, because just know that your ancestors got you. Your ancestors got you. You got to push through it. You got to find something that's going to make you feel like it's okay to ask questions, to critique what's happening to your people. It's going to fuck you up when you do. But yeah, we looking through a spiritual lens, y'all, because I'm not religious. I don't forgive nobody. I don't forgive nothing. Matter of fact, I took back my forgiveness. I took back my forgiveness for everything. Everything that I had forgave. I took back my forgiveness. I don't forgive nothing. I feel like, when I forgave everything that my ancestors endured and suffered, I didn't know the depth of their terror that they was experiencing. So I feel like I was misled with that, and I don't forgive nobody that did any harm to my ancestors. Carolyn Bryant, for example, I don't forgive her, her brother, her husband, her brother-in-law. I don't forgive none of them. Even her family that let her live out the rest of her life and stuff. My family, my people, y'all found in Kentucky. That's where she was at. I don't forgive them either. Nope, I don't spare them no mercy either for what's to come because of what happened to Emmett Till. I just don't. What happened to Isaac McGee? I don't forgive none of it. LQ Ivy, I didn't even know about LQ. I'm learning so much. Yeah, it's enough that I can say I don't forgive nothing. I sure don't. So no, I ain't religious, I'm spiritual, y'all. And we look at through a spiritual lens of loyalty, resilience, and education, because you, Black America, need to know who you loyal to. You need to know who you loyal to. All this faith and stuff, you putting it in other folks and stuff ain't got you nowhere. It ain't got us nowhere. We need to know why. We loyal to the wrong people. Let's cover that up because that distracts me and stuff. You know. So yeah, we look at through a spiritual lens of loyalty. We look at through a spiritual lens of resilience. Whoever. Who else can go through this that we done been through and still survive and build this country up? And forgive and be sincere. We don't be malicious. We don't be thinking no underhanded shit about white folks and stuff. We were sincere in forgiving them and staying among them, coexisting among them. We didn't get away like the Amish do. We didn't. We stayed with them. We came with them and stuff and mingled and married with them and stuff. You know, I feel betrayed. I feel betrayed by white America. That's why I don't forgive nothing and stuff. And vengeance belongs to my ancestors. I know vengeance belongs to the Lord and stuff, but that's what you say. That's what you say. My ancestors finna take a whole chunk of that because they deserve it. It's theirs. It's theirs. We look through a spiritual lens of education because I didn't know none of this. But now I'm learning. I do now. We better get our babies. We better get our babies. We the ones supposed to have our babies. We the ones supposed to have our back. We the only ones that can hold us and embrace us and inspire us. The only thing white America can do for us is keep us down, keep us afraid. It's over. Them days is over with and stuff, y'all. You either get on Cold Family and try to let your people know, or they gonna be, trapped in with white America. They still gonna be caught up in this bullshit out here. So, do all you can to let them know that, hey, you got to start something. You got to start something somewhere. And I know they ain't going to want to, but shit, you're going to have to set some boundaries and stuff. They want to be around you. They want to see you and stuff. Well, hey, look, the little 30 minutes that I'm there, you're going to have to turn off Andy Griffith motherfucking ass. Or I won't be coming back. I'm just saying, But yeah, let's get the copyright disclaimer out the way because I don't even want to be worried about that either. Copyright disclaimer under 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use, and that's in quotation marks, for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips to balance in favor of fair use. Is fair use is that like wordplay? So-called, yeah, we reading this for so-called, purpose, I guess. I don't know. Well, I'm serious about this. That's why I'm reading. Because, yeah, I ain't just sitting down here reading Amelia Bedelia. I'm not talking to y'all about Helen Keller. No, we reading true life right here. Black people. But look, y'all, we moving on in our book. Yeah, we ain't going to spend all night. I'm trying to, not spend a lot of time talking and stuff. Because I think by now most of us know why we here for the ancestors. Let's see where we at in this book right here. Oh, I belong to the missus. But anyway, y'all, this is They Were Her Property. It's a new book. We just finished reading Duluth, the lynchings in Duluth. We just finished reading that. I didn't even know about that either. About that right there. The lynchings in Duluth. Isaac McGee, Elmer Jackson, and Elias Clayton. I put their name up there on the wall. Yeah. Elias and Elmer was 1901 to 1920 when they were lynched. And Isaac McGee was born in 1900, and then they were lynched in 1920. Yeah. I feel like, Minnesotans, all of their asses, with thousands of them there. I don't know where they came from. They were coming from everywhere. And I feel like, Minnesotans, they held off as long as they could to experience the lynching of black bodies, black men. And so Irene Tuscan and her boyfriend Jimmy Sullivan came up with the lie that a black man, 4 black men, 6 black men at the carnival attacked them, and they drug Irene off and raped her and assaulted her and stuff. And that's why the lynching took place. And I feel like, Minnesotans, they knew that none of that happened. They knew. It was in the book that they knew. They had suspicions that, she was just hyperventilating and shit. Wasn't nothing wrong with her. She hadn't been assaulted or nothing. I feel like they let it happen because they wanted to experience one time, but that's too much to want to experience. It's too much to want to experience to me. And then it said in the book and stuff, it was just forgot about. We don't talk about it. We won't bring it up or nothing like that, and it ain't that easy for us. It was when you were forced. We were forced to not talk about it and forget about it and stuff, but it's a different day. This a new day. We gonna talk about it. We got to. I want to know what's wrong with my people, why we won't come together. That's why I'm here. I know y'all was saying, get your channel, telling us, get your channel and stuff. You're a certain age and stuff. You're supposed to be on social media, using it, benefiting from it, networking and stuff like that. And then they were like, you got to find a need that need to be filled. Find something that you care about, you passionate about it. And even if ain't nobody doing it, it's just going to be you. But you got to do it and stuff. And I see this as the need that need to be filled. I want to help fill this need. What's wrong with my people? What's going to happen to my people that we can't come together? I want to know. I did resonate with a brother when I heard someone say, or I read it, and they were like, why come our people don't come together except at funerals? And so that made me want to know why. I think that void needs to be filled. We need to look at that. Why come we don't come together except for at funerals? And it seemed like it's because of all the trauma that we have endured. We've endured. We feel that our body's memory stores information 30,000 years in our body's memory. I think it's longer than 30,000 years because, white folks lie. Yep, they lie. But we've been here on this planet for 300,000 years, longer than that. And white people only been here like 8,000 years, but they done took over and controlled everything and stuff. It's just this matrix and stuff, y'all. It's something to this. We got to look at this whole thing. Yeah, we got to look at this whole thing. This is going to really, make y'all feel some type of way. Those of y'all that don't know and not familiar with everything, and you just coming on, you just waking up or whatever, and it's going to be challenging. You might have a little anxiety about it and stuff, but just keep pushing through and just come to a point where it's okay with you, what you got to do. It's got to be okay with you, what you got to do and stuff. That way you'll be able to do it. Because if you don't, it's not going to get done. Your part ain't going to get done. Somebody else might come and they doing the same thing and stuff, but they fulfilling their part. We got to fulfill our part. And this is mine right here. I want to know why the hell we can't come together. What the hell is wrong with us? And, and now that I know, I ain't seen nothing else yet. Why we won't come together. I know we say, because we got away from God. And because we this and we that and we this and we that. But hell, why we that? Why all of them branches and stuff? Can we get down to the root of the problem? What's wrong with my people? And then I realized and stuff, don't nobody want to say it. Don't nobody want to say what's wrong with us. I'll say it. I will say it. I sure will. I'll say it. Y'all don't want to say it. It's white folks. That's the curse we under. White folks. We get away from white folks and focus on us and live for us and be for us and stuff. I promise y'all we'll get back to us. Because right now you're looking like white folks. You're acting like white folks. Eating like white folks. Breathing like white folks. Dressing like white folks. We literally thinking and just breathing like white folks. Our nose going to be like this if we don't straighten our shit up. Yeah, because we ain't even using our full breathing capacity. It's like we all damn probably hyperventilating, taking all these shallow breaths and stuff. We supposed to be breathing deeply and stuff. White folks they psyching all of our energy right on up out of us. Oh, whoa, yeah. We better really think about this. Our relationship with white folks here on earth and after we leave this earth. We leave this place, Black America. All of this ain't for nothing. This is not for nothing. This is not a game. We ain't going to be here forever. And when we leave, it's just going to go on and on. No, all of that bullshit. We supposed to be fixing things while we here. I know, hell, I wasted 43 years of my life. Hell, I thought everybody else was handling things. I thought everybody else was taking care of things and making sure that we wasn't played for a fool. I thought I was just fucking up, and people that, that probably dropped out of school and, went through some shit in life. We just fucked up, made some mistakes and stuff. But now, honey, it's a whole system out there. That system is like a baby. It is. It's a whole system. It never stops running. I didn't know about Neely Fuller. I didn't learn about none of our elders, our greats. Sure didn't. Oh, I'm so mad at them teachers I had. Them motherfuckers. How dare you? I feel some type of way about teachers and stuff now. I held teachers in high esteem. I probably wanted to be a teacher when I was a little girl. But for them to not let us get any of the knowledge that we needed, I'm saying where I'm from. I know y'all learned about some things and stuff up north. But where I'm from and stuff, me and my friend and my class of people, we didn't get any knowledge about us. Man, I feel some type of way. I want to sue all they motherfucking asses. Sure do. Want to go on my school, what's that, the school site. They keep up with you and stuff and let you know, like when people done moved and got married or passed away and stuff like that. I feel like going on there leaving a huge ass message for their asses. I just got to be okay with the ancestors and the cosmos and Mother Gaia. I got to be okay and let them go on and handle this. And I am. I'm getting my ass out the way. Sure will. Don't stand behind me. Karen, Sabrina, if you trying to protect white folks and stuff for what's coming, don't get behind me. I'm not going to have that. This book right here, They Were About Her Property, White Women as Slave Owners in the American South. It's by Stephanie E. Jones Rogers. Let's see how long this chapter is. Ain't no pages in this book. It don't look that long. Look. That's chapter 3. Oh, here we are right here. She thought she could find a better market. That's the chapter. We on chapter 4. Look. Mary Kinchian Edwards, formerly enslaved woman who served as a wet nurse. Born in slavery. Ooh, this was a slave narratives. Slave narratives from the Federal Writers Project. 1936 to 1938. Digital collection. Library of Congress. Manuscript Division. Look at Mary. That's Mary right there. Yeah, we'll read about her when we get to that. I'm sure it's going to tell us something about Mary. Oh, this is a short chapter. All right, look. That's a short chapter. Maybe we could do 2. I don't know. I'm beginning to read better. I'm going to keep them separated just in case. Because, I'm getting better reading and stuff. I'm used to reading to myself mostly. But, I don't mind reading out loud and stuff. I don't mind reading this out loud. We need to know these things. We need to know these things, and we gonna know them too. She thought she could find a better market. Oh, and this right here, one of you guys had told me about these books. I went and ordered these books right here because they was in my chat somewhere and stuff. And I write down books that y'all be mentioning. See? Books to buy. Yep, and I write down books to buy for the personal library. Get your personal library. We got to get our personal library, help our friends and neighbors and family and stuff, help them start theirs too. Yeah. But this right here, because see, a lot of us seem to be under the impression that it was the white men that were the real slave drivers. It was both of them. White women were just as brutal with with slaves, black men, black women, and black children too. You know, so yeah, that's why this book right here is very important. And I don't think it's gonna be the only one that's gonna teach us the white woman's position as far as the slave stuff, because I didn't even know it. I really thought that it was the white man, but it was the white woman who was given slaves when she was a little girl, a baby, even an infant. An infant as young as 3 days old, 3 weeks old, they would give her a slave to be her forever slave. And that the woman's children and they children, because you know, white folks meant this to be forever. So, you know, yeah, when I seen this book right here in the title, I got to get that right there. So I got it. And we reading it now. We just finished lynchings in Duluth. And before that, it was racial violence in the United States. Then racial violence in Kentucky, 1865 to 1940. And before that, it was our first book, Read Something. We just been reading. We just been learning, because I want to know what happened to my people. And I'm glad you want to know too. We trying to heal us. We got to heal us, but we got to find out why, what's wrong, what happened. And it looked to me like it's white folks. White folks did it. I ain't seen nothing else yet. Anybody else that we see and come across and learn about that have hurt our people, yep, we going to call them out too. Yeah, they going to have to make amends for that. They got karma coming. Ain't nobody finna escape this. So I don't care where they was at, whether it was directly or indirectly received, as long as they knew what these consequences is finna be. Yeah, our ancestors, they ain't sparing no mercy for this. How can they? How can they? We done spared all the mercy for everything that happened to them. We forgave everything. We gave them so many mercies and forgiveness. Yeah, so now the ancestors ain't finna spare nothing. We better get our asses out the way. You better start preparing and prepping. I'm sure trying. Yeah, because this is finna get real, real tough. And you just want to stay low and don't go. Nope, don't you take your ass outside for nothing. You be with your family. You be at home, Black America. That's where we got to be at right now. Everything else is going to take its place how it's supposed to. You just got to get out the way. You better get your ass out the way. She thought she could find a better market. Martha J. Jones was a young white girl living in the upper western region of Virginia when she acquired extensive knowledge about the slave market and the slave trade. Her father's slave dealing brother was her teacher, and his farm served as her school. Martha Jones not only knew through secondhand knowledge that her uncle, John C. Turner, would buy, sell, and trade slaves all the time, she witnessed him engaging in these activities herself. During her childhood, she would visit her uncle and watch him swap and buy slaves, just the same as he was buying any other stock for his farm. From her observations, Jones also learned about the slave market economy. After seeing her uncle negotiate prices for enslaved people, Jones reasonably concluded that those who were big and strong would bring a good price, as they would be better workers for the fields. Martha Jones' parents did not think that exposing their daughter to her uncle's business would warp her sense of humanity or make her any less feminine, sensitive, or manageable. Although in a WPA interview she gave in the 1930s, she never says whether she visited a slave market or bought slaves herself. Her reflections about her uncle reveal why she did not have to. She knew what the slave market was like because it was all around her. The process of buying and selling slaves began long before individuals stepped into a slave market. The market that Martha Jones remembered was not contained within the slave pens, the yards, or auction blocks housed within the commercial center of her community. It was conducted at her uncle's home, and her memories mirror those of young white women throughout the South. Recent studies about the slave trade offer more expansive schemata, schemata, offer more expansive schemata of the southern slave market. which similarly push beyond the architectural boundaries of the commercial spaces associated with it. But the slaveholding household assumes a rather benign role within this broader framework. Formerly enslaved people's reflections about the entire slave market system and the people responsible for buying and selling them are beginning to figure within current understandings of the slave marketplace and the process of sale. Most commonly, historians see the slave market as a masculine place, a domain in which white women did not belong. When women wanted to buy or sell a slave, they found ways to participate in the market without going to the marketplace, such as through instructions given in a letter or arguments made in a parlor discussion. Typically, these historians assert women asked the men in their lives to do the work of slave buying and selling for them. If such were the case, the household and the slave market never met in tangible ways. But such a depiction of the slave market and of the white woman's alienation from it presents a characterization of the slave trade and the slave owning household that belies the testimony of both formerly enslaved people and white women. For both groups, the slave market pervaded the household, and in many instances, the two were one and the same. The women took full advantage of this convergence. Formerly enslaved people frequently spoke about this more expansive slave market. For them, the slave market was a mobile, spatially unbounded economic network that connected urban commercial districts to plantation estates and incorporated boarding houses, rural pathways, urban streets, taverns, and coffee shops, as well as holding pens and auction houses. They also saw slave-holding households, their porches, kitchens, dining rooms, and bedrooms, and the fields and the quarters, the living quarters, along with the pathways and roads surrounding them as fundamental parts of the slave market. In all these places, slave-owning women orchestrated the sale and purchase of enslaved people. Not only did slave-owning women participate in the public haggling over black bodies in the slave pen, the slave yard, and the auction block, they frequently subjected enslaved people to the terror of the slave market in the privacy of their homes. White slave traders, auctioneers, and brokers prepared enslaved people for sale by the sides of country roads, in southern auction houses, and in slave trading establishments. White women talked with friends and family members about their labor needs and the desire to buy and sell enslaved men, women, and children. They were often able to fulfill their desire without visiting a brick and mortar marketplace, because this process often took place, or at least began, in their homes. So they didn't have to go nowhere. But when they did, they went. Historians of the Southern slave market view it as a corrosive, corrupting, sexually charged, and brutal, and many claim that it was considered too abhorrent a place for white women to visit. But when women chose to hire, buy, or sell enslaved people in or near their homes and beyond the formal marketplace, they were not avoiding the perceived sexual and social disorder associated with these markets. The plantation landscape was itself marked by that disorder. On any given day, white women and white girls would witness white men and women committing violent acts upon the nude and partially exposed bodies of enslaved people in their household and their fields. Lizzie Ann Burwell, Burwell, the child who at age 3 wanted to replace her enslaved companion, lived in a household where her father, John A. Burwell, beat her mother, Lucy, and ran the Negroes about with guns and sticks, something he claimed to do out of fun. He openly engaged in an extramarital affair with and quite likely sexually assaulted an enslaved woman who belonged to his wife. On one occasion, he told his wife that he had no intention of sharing her bed that night, but would occupy a different room. Then, in the presence of his wife, his sons, and his daughters, including Louisiana, who was not yet 12 years old, he summoned an enslaved female to his room where he allegedly required her attendance and she remained in the room with him during the night. This same enslaved female had, within a few years past, been the mother of 2 children, the offspring of a white father. And Lucy believed that John had fathered them. Such incidents make it clear that the social and sexual disorder that characterized Southern slave markets also pervaded slaveholding households. The slaveholding household was a place of coerced production and reproduction, racial and sexual exploitation, and physical and psychological violence. It was a place where white Southern women grew accustomed to the violence of slavery, contemplated the sale and purchase of slaves, and used the bodies of the enslaved people they owned in ways that reinforced their pecuniary value. The household became an extension of the slave market, and white women capitalized upon their access to both. They not only did the thinking about slave buying, taking stock of their labor needs and the kind of workers who could meet them, they orchestrated the sale, the purchase, and the exchange of slaves in the domestic spaces. When they were ready to finalize their decisions, white women summoned slave traders to their homes to transact their business. The argument that white Southern women were alienated from slave markets and immune to the machinations of the trade seems far-fetched in the face of the ubiquity of slave traders and speculators and their business in urban and rural landscapes, as well as in private homes. White slave-owning women frequently did not need to go to the slave market because the slave market came to them. Some women employed their husbands and male kin as agents and proxies who would conduct their business in slave marketplaces. This delegation of authority might seem to offer proof that men dominated the partnerships these women formed with them, and that such delegation signified these women's relinquishment of control over their financial affairs. But this perspective simplifies the ways women used agents and proxies and leaves out the fact that slave-owning women also employed other women to serve as their agents and attorneys, in fact. Furthermore, even when women employed male agents to conduct some aspect of their business in Southern slave markets, they also ventured into these markets or attended slave auctions themselves. Moreover, it is inaccurate to assume that the reliance on kin and friends as proxies was a uniquely female practice. It was not. They like to go themselves, too. I imagine the only reason they probably didn't go there was they would tell them, oh, you're feeling a little weak today and you look a little flushed, and it's going to be a big spectacle today and stuff. Maybe rest. But other than that, her ass was going. White women were going. They wanted a seasoned slave owner. Let me back up. Some men, particularly those who did not own slaves, often asked slave owning or slave dealing men to accompany them when they went to markets to buy their first slaves. They wanted a seasoned slave owner to help them avoid making unsound purchases and buy the best enslaved people for their money. Men also appointed women who were not married to them as their agents and attorneys, in fact. It was common for 18th century sailors and merchants to appoint their wives as their attorneys, in fact, when their business required extended absences away from home. The historian Sarah Damiano, Damiano, argues that in these commercial contexts, many financial activities were not coded as masculine or feminine, and women who acted for their husbands demonstrated financial and legal skill as they negotiated with creditors and debtors, collected and paid debts, and safeguarded financial documents. Sometimes when the husbands appointed their wives to act as attorneys, in fact, they delegated some of the more technical and complex responsibilities to men who worked in conjunction with their wives to ensure that business was taken care of. While this may have been the case in reference to women acting on their spouse's behalf as deputy husbands, such scenarios do not tell us about the arrangements that married slave-owning women made with the male attorneys, in fact, nor does it give us a sense of the constraints married women imposed upon these men's power to act on their behalf. Additionally, the constraints and limitations that married women who served as their husbands' attorneys in fact confronted cannot, however, help us fully understand the arrangements these women made with and the powers they granted to female attorneys in effect. While many white slave-owning men established business relationships with men whom they did not consider kin, friends, or even social equals, white slave-owning women's business relationships were generally with male kin and female friends. The relationships between factors and their male clients can help elucidate, elucidate, how these women's business arrangements function. Factors operated as proxies for their clients, and they were useful because planters often lived far from the commercial centers of the South. Hiring factors allowed a planter to buy and sell, contract and pay his debts, and in general, have his affairs cared for without being required to travel to town or to concern himself with problems of exchange, problems of transfer of funds, and discounts, and stuff like that. Factors also attended to personal requests for products and goods that had nothing to do with planting. More important, factors sometimes became close acquaintances with their clients, even developing long-standing friendships over the years and establishing kinship ties through marriage. Slave-owning women relied upon people they knew or individuals whom once slave-owning women relied upon people they knew or individuals whom loved ones recommended to conduct their business, and these proxies served very practical purposes. Employing factors was risky because such business partnerships required planters to invest enormous amounts of trust in men they knew only cursorily, cursorily, men who might take their crops and their money and abscond with them and rob them, leave with their shit. White slave-owning women reduced their level of risk by employing family members and friends. Of course, family and friends were not always above betrayal, but relying on male friends and kin decreased the likelihood of it. Recall that Sarah Devereaux, Devereaux, for example, lived in New Haven, Connecticut, but her plantation and slaves was located in North Carolina. As an absentee owner, she called upon her brother-in-law, Thomas, to serve as her agent and factor, in large because he lived near her property holdings, and she was unable to travel across the Mason-Dixon line as often as she would have liked. They corresponded regularly about her land, her slaves, and her cotton, and when her slave Sally became troublesome, she began to contemplate selling her along with or without Sally's children. Sally asked Thomas for his opinion. She explained that it was difficult for her to sell her and those children, or without them. And because of this, she was perplexed and not sure what her duty was. Ultimately, she told Thomas that Sally had given her trouble enough ever since she was grown. And if he thought it best to make her an example, then he should sell her. Since Thomas had previously mentioned that he was planning to sell some of his own slaves, Sarah suggested that he sell Sally right along with his. Ooh, let's give some shots out. Oh, it's so good to see you. Yes, it's a new day. Female Wolf of Wall Street Slave Trader Edition. Yes, I have access to that slave interview archive. Okay. Yep, I used to read the slave narratives. Yep, and it was for a reason, too. It was for a reason. All of it was. It ain't no coincidences, y'all. While many white slave-owning men established business relationships with men whom they did not consider. Oh, I think I already read that, didn't I? Yeah, we further than that. because you know they finna sell Sally. Yeah. Sarah's hesitance about selling Sally was not grounded in her sense of inadequacy as a businesswoman. Rather, her letter suggests that prices might have been low at the time, or that there might have been low local demand for enslaved persons with Sally's skills. Sarah does not convey some emotional disease about the sale, but her letter to her brother-in-law suggests that she was not particularly interested in his judgment about a decision she had already made. Sarah seemed to want Thomas to confirm that she was right to sell Sally for misbehavior and perhaps grant her absolution from the moral implications of the sale. Had she been in North Carolina to manage her own estate and slaves, she might have excused her brother-in-law from his managerial role and felt more certain about her decision to sell Sally away from her home and her family. Elizabeth Guy also employed her brother-in-law, John A. Burwell, to help her with financial transactions involving the slave people she owned. And her decision was similarly grounded in matters of distance and proximity. She had relocated from Kentucky to New Orleans, and she hadn't yet made arrangements to transport the enslaved people she owned to her new residence. Burwell lived closer to where her slaves were, which made him better placed to conduct this business. Their correspondence demonstrate that men generally took their responsibilities to their female kin seriously, and their relationships with these women were much like those between factors and clients who were not related by blood or marriage. In his report about her slaves' well-being and their earnings, Burwell wrote with business-like formality, explaining every delay and possible discrepancy in Guy's financial affairs. In addition, he provided an itemized statement which delineated every penny of Guy's that he had spent. Even though she was family, Burwell granted Guy the respect that an agent or factor would confer upon a client. When women hired agents not related to them to handle their business, they held these men to high standards of professionalism and were not afraid to call their decisions into question. Throughout the first half of the 19th century, Eliza Bowman Lyons, a large-scale Louisiana planter who lived near Bayou Sarah, employed multiple agents, factors, and commission merchants to sell her cotton. Burt, Watt and Company, one of the agencies with which she steadily did business, routinely sent her detailed accounts of various sales and explained any discrepancies or shortfalls. On more than one occasion, the company also bought enslaved people on her behalf. Glendy Burke, Glendybburke, was Lyons' agent in the purchase of an enslaved woman and her children in 1839. And Lyons asked another of the company's agents, Louis DeSaules, Desaulles, to purchase a woman servant who was a good washer and ironer in 1843. He informed her that he had one for sale, and for $1,000 he would be willing to sell her to Lyons. For the most part, Lyons maintained amicable professional relationships with these men. But the response of one of her factors, one Lalande, Lalande, one Lalande, to a letter of December the 5th, 1850, leaves little doubt that Lyons had expressed her displeasure about the way he handled her business, calling his reputation and character into question and rejecting what she considered his ill-conceived advice. The trouble between them began after Lalande learned that Lyons was sending cotton to 3 or 4 commission merchants and not solely to him. Although Lalande had assured Lyons that his agents were fully competent to sell cotton or do anything else, she had no confidence in his employees. Lyons told Lalande that she had been so fortunate for 26 years to have met only with gentlemen, and she was sorry that she and Lalande had so far misunderstood each other's character. What seemed to bother Lyons most was her inability to pay 2 notes worth $5,000 each that had come due within a month of each other. Lyons had counted on the proceeds from the sale of her cotton to pay them, but Lalande had advised her to hold on to your cotton while he was on a trip in New York City. As a consequence, she had met with serious losses. For this, Lyons believed she had a right to complain, and so she did, every chance she got. Some women avoided these kind of encounters by relying on networks made up of female kin and acquaintances to purchase the goods they wanted. Familial and friendship ties often provided women with the credit or the money to finalize these transactions. If a woman was seeking goods in a distant market, she might entrust a friend or family member with whom she shared a common sense of value and style with the purchase choice. A woman's sale and purchase of enslaved people was handled in the same way as her sale and purchase of other goods. Like just go to town and buy some groceries, buy some sugar and bread. That's how it was. Slave sales were often collaborative efforts involving a number of individuals bound to one another in some way or another. As the historian Ellen Hartigan O'Connor has argued, power was a part of every transaction, and the role individuals played within these collaborations shaped the power they had over the transaction. Some held the purse strings, others performed the legwork, some balancing the commands and the judgment, still others provided opinions, solicited and unsolicited, about goods, shop, and money. Slave-owning women frequently hired their slaves to or purchased them from neighbors and friends. And such arrangements may well have been executed in the home rather than in the slave market. Lelia Tucker, Lelia Tucker wrote a letter to her husband in which she documented one female acquaintance's negotiations with 3 slave-owning women in their social circle. A woman she called Mrs. P, who had recently settled in their Virginia community, had not only hired a house servant from one Mrs. Braxton, she had also hired or purchased a washerwoman who belonged to a Mrs. Charlton. Tucker told her husband that Mrs. P expected to take Mrs. Prentice's cook on trial before she ventured to purchase her. Lelia Tucker mentioned no involvement by male kin, a proxy, or an agent in the agreements made between Mrs. P and the other woman. Mrs. P was likely to have learned about the available service through local female gossip and approached the slave owners herself. Such local sales and hires between friends and acquaintances could be the reason why these transactions remained out of slave traders' account books. Mrs. P's negotiations and transactions with Mrs. Braxton, Mrs. Charlton, and Mrs. Prentice offer further evidence of the integration of the home and the insensitive and brutal market in slaves. The slave market so thoroughly saturated the slaveholding household that a slave-owning home could never be a place characterized solely by human relations unqualified by price. All 4 of these women incorporated currency and human commodities into their social network. And we have been through so much. Let's read. When African Americans characterized Southern households as vital components of the slave marketplace, they rarely made a distinction between the private household and the public slave market for good reason. According to their accounts, white women and girls were routinely exposed to the sale and purchase of enslaved people in their homes and around them. The men who plied their trade in human flesh were their husbands, fathers, brothers, friends, and neighbors, and they owned slaves too. Slave dealers exposed their wives and daughters to the trade when they brought their work home with them. They passed by or visited white women's households and stayed in their homes while they were traveling to distant slave markets. They brought slave coffles to estates in hopes of selling some of the people in them. They also approached white women about selling the slaves they owned. In a variety of ways, enslaved people's testimony reveals that there was little separation between home and work for the men engaged in the slave trade. If the slave market and the trade had been considered unsuitable for women, white women could have simply avoided all the talk of business when slave traders came around. but some mistresses was clearly taking part. Sally McNeil, McNeill, a slaveholding woman residing in Brazoria County, Texas, in the mid-19th century, wrote in her diary about her grandfather's business negotiations with John Evans, a man who was involved in the slave trade. On June the 21st, 1859, McNeil recorded her concern because Evans had been gone for 2 months, taking $10,000 of her granddaddy's money with him. Evans had suddenly disappeared from the horizon of our limited vision. Evans eventually came back with the slaves he bought for McNeil's granddaughter and a female neighbor. Her grandfather was apparently satisfied with the purchase because he sought out Evans' services on subsequent occasions. While McNeil discusses her neighbor's suspicions about Evans' trustworthiness, her grandfather seemed relatively comfortable buying slaves from him. Furthermore, from McNeil's diary entries, it seemed that her grandfather made no attempt at all to shield her from his dealings with Evans. McNeil may not herself have purchased slaves from Evans, but she was privy to the transactions he secured for her grandfather, even going so far as to cite the amount of money her grandfather gave him, the number of slaves he purchased, and whom he purchased them for. Whether connected by bloodline or nuptials, the wives and female kin of Southern men involved in the business of buying and selling slaves and their children experienced the intersection of the slave market and the household firsthand because they knew about the work their spouses and male kin did. They understood the financial stakes involved, and they sometimes had to protect their property from those men, the slave women. Some slave traders relinquished their ties to the business once they got married, a proceeding that one historian asserts was done in order to spare their wives from the trade's unsavory character. Isaac Franklin, a slave trader who was one of the richest Americans in the country, before his death in 1839, he quit the trade after he married Adelicia Hayes, Adelicia, but only after he had grown wealthy from buying and selling enslaved people. Other traders could not afford to quit the business, however, and still more did not even see a reason to do so. It is also quite likely that some husbands quit the trade because the work involved long absences away from home, which could strain a marriage or lead to its dissolution. The North Carolina slave trader, Isaac Jarrett, Jarratt, entered the slave trade long after he said his vows and when he was on the road. He, like other traders, kept his wife abreast of his whereabouts and the details of his work. Beginning in the 1830s, Isaac regularly wrote loving and affectionate letters to his wife, Harriet, when he was away from home buying and selling slaves, and he routinely updated her about his sales and his business prospects. In a letter of December 7, 1834, he informed her that he and his partner had sold 6 enslaved people that day, and he anticipated selling the remaining slaves a short time thereafter. But he warned her that he would not be able to return home until he collected the money that was due after the sales had been finalized. Wives like Harriet had to develop ways to contend with the uncertainties associated with their husband's business. On one hand, Harriet endured Isaac's long absences and dealt with the comings and goings of his partners and associates because, in large part, her livelihood depended upon Isaac's line of work. But at the same time, she was candid about her displeasure when he neglected her and his duties at home. In her response to a letter from Isaac on October the 19th, 1835, Harriet expressed her loneliness and her disappointment that he still had not come home. She further complained that although he was now a married man, he worked as hard at his business as his unmarried partner did. I am afraid, my dear husband, that you and your friend, Carson, something illegible, she probably called him a bastard, will keep up Negro trading as long as you can get a Negro to trade on. But one good thing, Mr. Carton has no wife to leave behind when he is gone. The voices of women whose husband bought and sold enslaved people for a living do not emerge often, but their actions speak volumes about how they felt about their husband's work. Ebenezer Johnson's wife frequently accompanied her husband on slave trade and kidnapping excursions. Johnson was a member of a notorious group that operated on the Delaware-Maryland border, kidnapping indentured and free people of color from the North and selling them into slavery in the South. These men committed their crimes under the leadership of Patty Cannon, Pattycannon, and her son-in-law, Joseph Johnson. Ebenezer was Joseph's brother. One of the gang members, and Samuel Scomp, S-C-O-M-P, a fugitive slave from New Jersey who was one of Ebenezer's captive victims, testified to seeing Ebenezer's wife accompany him on several such ventures. Scomp even overheard Ebenezer telling his wife how much one of his male captives sold for, how much money he would get for him. On the rare occasions when we do hear the voices of slave traders' wives, we find that these women exhibited far more concern about their husbands' long absences from home than the fact that their husbands sold human beings for a living. I was just wondering, all of that they was mentioning in the other paragraph, none of it was about empathy. Why they would quit the trade because of the long time away from home and the strain on the marriage and stuff. None of them quit the trade because it began to wear on their conscience, because they couldn't sleep at night. They were having memories of people that they were kidnapping and killing, and just selling them into slavery and stuff. It wasn't none of that, because they ain't got no emotion. There was no emotion. The absences and the uncertainties of the market proved to be more than some women could bear. They believed that slave trading had changed their husbands into men they hardly knew, and they sought to end their marriages to spouses who appeared as strangers to them. A Nash County, North Carolina woman named Petey Tisdale, might be Piety, Piety, Tisdale. Piety Tisdale sought to divorce her husband for this very reason. According to her divorce petition, she and her husband had lived peacefully for 15 years until he decided to become a slave trader. Shortly after he entered the business, he became an alcoholic, gradually distancing himself from his family and eventually abandoned them. Mary Crosby confronted a similar situation. Her experience also shows how men invested their wives' wealth in the slave market economy, whether they asked them to or not. Like the Tisdales, she and her husband, William had enjoyed a comfortable life for several years until he decided to go into the slave trade. Before their marriage, Mary had saved approximately $600 or $700, but these funds legally became William's when they got married. Sometime after they got married, William took Mary's money and began buying, trading, and speculating in slaves. William also began spending long periods of time away from home, though in the beginning, he would return to care for his family as often as his work allowed. Gradually, he began spending more and more time in Alabama, where Mary claimed he possessed a sizable amount of property, and presumably where he sold his slaves. He was sleeping with them slave women, just didn't want to go home. She and her 2 children had only been able to survive in the 6 years after William took up the slave trade and left them because of the kindness his mother showed them. Women were equally concerned with the pecuniary threats that their husband's slave trading posed to their own slave holdings. Armstead Barrett's owner, Ann, was married to a slave speculator named Ben Walker, and she was determined to maintain her personal investments in slavery. She refused to let her husband sell Barrett, and the other enslaved people she inherited from her father. Maddie Logan's mistress was also married to a slave trader, and she warned him not even to think about selling her slaves, especially the girls. In another exasperated letter to her husband, Isaac, after his prolonged absence, Harriet Jerry confessed her suspicions that when Isaac could no longer find enslaved people to buy and sell, he would carry off all the slaves he could pirate at home. The enslaved people to whom Harriet referred were prophets. He assured Harriet that he would never take the slaves unless she wished. And as long as she was satisfied with them, he would try to be content with them as well. He also assured her that if she wished them sold, he would sell them, and not until then. Some wives went beyond letter writing to protect their human property from their slave-dealing husbands. They flatly refused to let their husbands jeopardize or destroy their personal investments in the trade. And they took precautions to prevent their husbands from disposing of the slaves they owned. When a woman bought an enslaved person, she would make sure that the seller included a clause in the bill of sale that indicated that the slave was hers, her sole and separate property. Could nobody do nothing with her slave. Women like Adelaide Benoit Height of New Orleans might also petition the court for a separation of property to protect her slaves. Women like Adelaide Benoit Height of New Orleans might also petition the court for a separation of property to protect their slaves from their husbands' possible commercial blunders in the slave market. Adelaide married Samuel N. Hite, Hite, when he was one of the most active slave traders in the New Orleans market. Throughout their marriage, Samuel continued to engage in the slave trade, and he exposed Adelaide to his business on a routine basis. He not only entertained slave traders in his home, he permitted them to stay with his family and keep the slaves they hoped to sell with them. James W. Bozeman, Boazman, for example, a prolific and prominent New Orleans slave trader, resided in the Hite household for a short time. And while there, he worked as a Negro broker and kept the slaves he had for sale on the premises with him. Yet, despite Adelaide's marriage to this savvy speculator in human flesh, or perhaps because of it, she did not entrust him with the responsibility of executing and finalizing slave purchases and sales on her behalf. On December the 5th, 1844, after they had been married for a year or so, Adelaide sued Samuel for a separation of property. Her request included a claim against him for $5,000, the amount for her dowry. According to John Tarbe, Tarbe, another slave trader who testified on Adelaide's behalf, Samuel was supposed to invest her dowry in the slave trade and make a good deal of money with it by trading in Negroes. Adelaide's legal action suggests that Samuel failed to do so, or that he made poor investments. She told the court that Samuel's financial affairs were in such a disarray that she feared his creditors would seize her property to satisfy his debt, and she wasn't having that. The judge granted her request for separation of property on April 4, 1845, and from that point forward, she had the court's permission to control her own property and purchase more in her name if she wanted to. Almost immediately, Adelaide's name began to appear in New Orleans conveyance records, buying and selling slaves on her own account. And while the documents often mention Samuel as her husband, they don't identify him as her agent or her broker. When a married woman bought or sold property, the notarial record included the clause, duly authorized and assisted by her husband, or something similar to that. When he represented her during the transaction, the record clearly stated his role. But in all of Adelaide's transactions, only the language duly authorized and assisted, or duly assisted and authorized by her husband, appears, which means that Samuel merely gave his permission for her to act on her own behalf when she bought or sold property. While married to Samuel, Adelaide bought and sold slaves 26 times, and she continued to buy and sell slaves without his help well into the Civil War period, when she bought her last slave, Charles, on July 30th, 1862. Slave traders and speculators were neighbors or members of the family, and they bought their trade into the homes of their friends and their kin. Susan Merritt's owner lived on a plantation adjacent to one owned by a man who operated an establishment in the local slave market. Wade Dudley's owners, Bill and Nancy Kidd, KIDD, had a slave trading son. Alex Wood's master had a slave trading brother, and Woods would often see him bringing slaves in chains to the plantation when he was carrying them to Richmond to put them on the auction block to be sold. Speculators also routinely stayed with people they knew while traveling into the lower South or passed through plantation estates to rest as they made their way to the slave markets. W.L. Bost, B-O-S-T, was just 10 years old when slavery ended, but he could remember that the speculators would come through Newton, North Carolina, with droves and slaves. There was a good reason for him to remember, too. They always stay at our place. When Robert Glenn's owner put him up for auction, a slave trader by the name of Long bought him. After the sale, they set out for Long's home, and they stopped for refreshments at a plantation along the way. Glenn recalled the white women he met while he was staying there. They knew that Long had just purchased Glenn, and they also knew that Glenn had been separated from his mother and would probably never see her again. The itinerant traders did more sleep and rest when they visited estates throughout the South. They bought and sold slaves for their hosts while they were there. Enslaved people like Caleb Craig were frequently present when the slave dealers and the speculators came to their owners' plantations to ply their trade. Craig recalled that slave drubbers often came to the June place. They buy, sell, and swap niggas, just like they buy, sell, and swap horses, mules, and hogs. Women, too, took advantage of the opportunities presented to them when slave traders visited the farms and the estates. In April of 1801, James Murrell, Murrel, came to Mary Craig's York County, South Carolina plantation with a 5 or 6 year old enslaved boy named Mike, whom he hoped to sell. Mary Craig negotiated with Murrell and purchased the enslaved boy from him. It is worth mentioning that Mary Craig was married to Henry Craig at the time of the sale, but she, not her husband, negotiated with Murrell. The purchase was not as successful as Mary might have hoped. A little over a year later, Mike became sick with fever, and his illness progressed to swellings and running sores. Mike died a short time thereafter, and Mary sued Murrell for breach of warranty. Speculators frequently enticed slave owners with proposals to buy their slaves, though some owners, like Liza Jones' mistress, refused their offers. One white Southerner commissioned a local slave trader to purchase a blacksmith on his behalf and claimed he was willing to pay any price for a good one. As the trader traveled through the countryside looking for an enslaved man that met the client's specifications, he heard about a wealthy but dying woman who owned exactly the kind of blacksmith he sought. He approached her and offered her a price she could not refuse. For $1,000, the dying woman sold her blacksmith right away from his wife and his children, whom he probably never saw again. Slave traders and speculators sometimes conducted their business in the roads adjacent to plantations, and enslaved people would watch them along with white women who were attentive to and interested in the enslaved people they offered for sale or who they wanted to sell. Like yard sales. You know how you see yard sales when you be driving and stuff, especially in the summertime, and you see them garage sales and stuff and on side the road. How about them little fruit stands and stuff? That's how I'm seeing it. How they ass just stopped on side the road and just had a slave auction. You know, just as Charles Henderson's sister watched the slave trader and his coffle pass through her Danville, Kentucky neighborhood, she spotted a crying and distraught enslaved girl among the group. She sent word to her brother to buy the child at once for her. He tracked down the slave trader and bought the girl for his sister for $700. Charity Bowery's mistress sold her to a speculator who would pass by her estate. Unknown to her, Barry had often served the man oysters from a food stand she operated, even when he was unable to pay. The slave trader remembered her kindness, and after he bought Bowery and served and several of her children, he set her and one of the children free as recompense. He tried, I guess. Slave trading men bought southern households and slave markets together, allowing white women to execute transactions in the slave market and benefit from the trade without ever having to leave their farms or the plantation. But formerly enslaved people also spoke of occasions when their owners sold them in slave markets of their own making and bid them off in venues they organized on their estates for that very purpose. Like in the movie Get Out. You know, in the movie Get Out, when they had the auction and all of them was her family and stuff, and they was seeing what they wanted. And it was at home. They was at home, at the family home, out in the middle of nowhere. That's kind of like what I'm getting. Yeah. Wow. The slave traders. Wait a minute. Whoa. Oh, Sadiya, Saidiya, Sadiya Hartman. Sadiya Hartman had called a slave auction the theater of the marketplace because enslaved people's captors forced them to perform roles that made them appear to be white Southerners' ideal slaves. Under the threat of violence, they fabricated life stories and feigned fitness, pleasure, and contentment before an audience of prospective purchasers. Although these kinds of performances are typically associated with sales in slave markets that were located in cities and towns, they also occurred in auctions on plantation estates and farms. Katie Rowe was raised on an estate where her owner's husband would sell slaves during auctions he held on his plantation. He had a tree stump fitted out for that purpose, placed it in his yard, and made the niggers stand on it while they was being sold. Rowe remembered that white men from around there come to bid, and some traders come to sell. The slave traders who attended these sales brought along the droves of slaves they had purchased with hopes of reselling them, and they would have them all strung out in a line going down the road. The master's wife, who owned Katie, her mother, and her grandmother, would not allow him to sell her slaves, but she undoubtedly witnessed these affairs. Joe High, who was enslaved in North Carolina, remembered that slaves were sold on a block his mistress used to mount her horse. There were 2 steps to it. I remember seeing them sold from this block. When asked about his mistress, Annie Poore, Poore, Tom Hunt. When asked about his mistress, Annie Poore, Tom Hawkins explained that she was all the time selling her slaves for big prices after she done trained them to be cooks and house gals and house boys, carriage drivers, and good washwomen. Hawkins also said that he saw old Miss sell the slaves what she trained. She made them stand up on a block she kept in the backyard while she was auctioning them off. Within the confines of her home and in the open spaces of her Georgia estate, Annie Poore trained the slaves she owned, and she sold them to the highest bidders. She was not married to a slave trader or speculator. She did not approach the men of the trade who walked past her estate so that she could buy one or more of the slaves in their coffers, nor did she send male family members, friends, or business associates to the local market to buy or sell her slaves. She transformed her backyard into a slave market with its own auction block to boot. From Hawkins' recollections, it would seem that the men who made their living selling and buying humans knew Poore's business well, for he remembered seeing slave traders all the time. Annie Poore was a slave master, a slave trader, and an auctioneer, and by all measures, she was a mistress of the slave market. She knew that training enslaved African Americans to fulfill specific functions would augment their value, and she could command specific prices for them on the basis. She also knew that if she had slaves with these skills to sell, the buyers would come to her to bid upon them, and they did. These kind of details about slave-owning women and enslaved people's daily lives were what the abolitionist Angelina Grimke called the miniature of slavery, MINUTIAE, miniature of slavery. For women like Annie Poor and Joe Hyde's mistress, nothing connected with the business was strange or familiar to them because they spent their lives immersed in slavery. Even its most appalling details, slave owning women's lifelong exposure to every dimension of slavery made it possible for them to take advantage of the intersections between the market and the plantation, and it allowed them to effortlessly navigate the slave market economy that connected them. Not all women engaged in such elaborate and orchestrated affairs when they wanted to buy or sell enslaved people. Far more women bought and sold slaves privately and have therefore often escaped historians' notice. Their slave market activities also remain relatively invisible because the sales took place among family members or among other women, and most important, because the transactions occurred outside of former slave markets. Like in the movie Get Out, George Womble's mistress, Mrs. Ridley, sold him to her brother Enoch Womble for $500. Mrs. Ridley's brother was not completely at ease about the purchase, even though the seller was his sister. He took the same precautions that any purchaser would. He bought George only after 3 doctors examined him and gave him a clean bill of health. Slave sales involving women might also remain obscure if the sales were rescinded. Martha Organ's mistress, Mrs. Jones, sold her slave Alice to a female neighbor, but she questioned her decision when she learned of her neighbor's brutal conduct toward the enslaved girl. Whenever Alice became cold from performing her work, Mrs. Jones had permitted her to come inside and warm herself by the fire. Alice assumed that her new owner would allow her to do the same thing, but according to Organ, Alice's new mistress made her stand for the fire till her legs burned so bad that the skin cracked up and some of it dropped off. When Mrs. Jones found out, she get a woman back her money and took Alice home with her. Smokey Eulenberg, Eulenberg. Smokey Eulenberg's slave-owning mistress tried to sell his mother and siblings to a sassy old woman named Mrs. Shepherd, who lived in their community, but the sale fell through for reasons Eulenberg made readily apparent. I recollect one time Mrs. sold my mother and 4 children, but it wasn't no trade. She, the buyer, come into my mother's cabin and grabbed her and told her she was going to take her home. Mother just pushed her out the door and said she wouldn't go, and she told Mrs. she wouldn't go, so they had to call it off. It was no trade. In this instance, 2 women came together to buy and sell trades, and they deemed themselves capable of executing the sale of their own. However, neither of them seemed prepared for a determined and resistant enslaved woman who stood between them and the sale they hoped to finalize. White men also transacted privately with women who hoped to sell their slaves. In a letter to his acquaintance, St. George Tucker, Sir Peyton Skipwith, Skipwith, wrote about a woman named Mrs. Dunbar who owned several excellent servants. Skipwith believed that there was probability that she might be moving from Virginia to Philadelphia or New York, and she had determined to sell all her black servants if she did. Skipwith was especially interested in buying an enslaved man who served as her cook. The man who told Skipwith about Mrs. Dunbar's cook spoke of the enslaved man's abilities and good condition. And since Skipwith was in want of a servant like him, he asked St. George Tucker to buy the cook on his behalf upon the best terms possible. He was willing to pay Miss Dunbar 150 pounds for him. Skipwith was riding to Tucker from his plantation in Clarksville, Virginia, so he was probably too far away from Mrs. Dunbar to handle the transaction himself. But he knew that he could entrust the deal to a local friend, whether male or female. None of the participants in these sales needed to go to a slave market because through networks of family and friends and via written and verbal communication, they learned about a slave owner's willingness to dispose of the slave people he or she owned. Wow, that's fucked up. That is so unbelievable. White folks. I'm my poor people. White slave owning women also negotiated with enslaved people who hoped to buy their freedom or the liberty of their loved ones, sales that constituted another aspect of slave market activities. These transactions reveal how white women used their slave market savvy to bargain with enslaved people while profiting from the transactions that took place in their households and on their estates. Formerly enslaved people offered countless examples of mistresses who bargained with them for their freedom or the liberty of loved ones. These transactions offered slave-owning women and enslaved people opportunities to acquire detailed knowledge about the slave market economy and the region's financial structure more generally, and they may have served as preparation for more sophisticated fiscal dealings later. Historians who acknowledge that some white slave-owning women were astute in financial and commercial matters often contend that these women developed these skills out of necessity, and they rarely suggest that transactions with enslaved people might have been instrumental in helping women acquire those skills. Faced with the death of a husband or a father, a fiscally inept spouse, war, or destitution, white slave-owning women quickly learned how to protect their assets and their family's financial well-being. Sure did, white women did. Let them find out they wasn't finna have them slaves to take care of their asses no more. And it was just gonna be them washing, cooking, cleaning, dusting, plowing the field and stuff. White women like, no, we ain't doing none of that. I'm keeping my slaves. This whole time and stuff, white women have been so protected all throughout history. And they were just as brutal, honey. Yeah. It is crucial to recognize that as human property that was exchanged, bought, sold, hired, and parceled out among white Southerners, enslaved people were not simply objects of sale or potential liquidation. They took an active interest in the market processes to which they were subjected and acquired extensive financial knowledge as a consequence. The slave market in all its aspects was a pervasive feature of enslaved African Americans' daily lives, and the direct or indirect encounters with three dimensions of the slave market economy: slave auction and sales, inheritance or debt collection, and self-purchase. Offered opportunities to learn about credit, debt, and contracts, allowed them to engage in financial negotiations, and it taught them to develop strategies for fiscal management. They calculated their own value, established the price for their freedom, decided terms of payment, and worked until they reached their financial goal. Yep. These financial calculations and dealings challenge us to rethink the intellectual and economic relationships between slavery and freedom for African Americans in the 19th century, and the roles white slave-owning women played in the process. While most Southern states prohibited enslaved people from entering into legally binding contracts, enslaved people consistently struck financial deals with their mistresses and potential allies in hopes of purchasing their freedom. Although slave-owning women were not bound by law in most Southern states to honor the peculiarities of the negotiations, their transactions were contractual by definition, with important exceptions. In French colonial Louisiana, slaves were forbidden to enter into contracts. But Louisiana's Code Noir, NOIR, recognized that despite this prohibition, slave owners continued to strike bargains with slaves who wanted to buy their freedom. Fearing that slaves might attempt to secure the funds to buy their freedom through dishonest means, the Code Noir required slave owners to obtain a degree of permission allowing the slaves to buy themselves. The Code Noir thus legitimated these agreements. Let me see. This is Louisiana's code. Let me see if I can find it very fast. I just had it because I was sharing it with someone, y'all, about all of them codes and all of them different states. I'm going to find it. Here it is, right here in my face. Louisiana. See? I just want to see what the Louisiana codes say. Is this the same Code War? NOIR, if I'm saying it right. Let me see, where's Louisiana? Louisiana, 1734, the Black Code, based on French Code Noir. It is based on French Code Noir, defining enslaved people as property, limited rights to free Black people, and it requires strict control. I just wrote down a few of them and stuff for each of the states, and that's what it's talking about. Yep. Confirmation. It's confirmation. I'm doing the right thing. That's all right. I just need confirmation myself when I remember. When I remember, I just need confirmation myself. Is this talking about this in my notes? And it is. It is. A lot of the times it is. We just got to connect the dots. Just keep going, family. Keep striving. It's going to make sense. Them dots going to begin to connect. Even if it wouldn't have connected, I would have just known that Louisiana got another code I need to look up. I'm just saying. Fearing that slaves might attempt to secure their funds to buy their freedom through dishonest means, the Code Noir requires slave owners to obtain a degree of permission allowing slaves to buy themselves. The Code Noir thus legitimated these agreements. And through a system called coartation, COARTACION, Spanish colonial Louisiana also provided enslaved people with a legal means by which to contract for and buy their freedom, even if their owners refused to let them. Enslaved people clearly took advantage of the opportunities such laws and systems presented because, as noted by historian Jennifer Spear, SPEAR, the slaves who became free via the system of coartation accounted for half of all manumissions in Spanish New Orleans. This also means that enslaved people's male and female owners had to at least be cursorily familiar with these laws too. Enslaved people who decided to purchase their freedom understood how their status as property shaped the ways in which they could expect to rely upon the state or local courts to protect their financial interests as they worked to secure the funds with which to do so. Lunsford Lane knew exactly what risk he faced when he negotiated with his mistress to purchase his liberty because he was her property by law. Legally, my money belonged to my mistress, and she could have taken it and refused to grant me my freedom. Lane's experience with his mistress inexplicitly revealed the ways the slave market might have helped him and his mistress determine his value and how the economy of the slave market permeated their negotiations. With it. After paying my mistress for my time and rendering such support as was necessary to my family, I found in the space of some 6 or 8 years that I had collected the sum of $1,000. I kept my money hid, never venturing to put out of money, and never let anybody but my wife know that I was making it. The $1,000 was what I was supposed. The $1,000 was what I supposed my mistress would ask for me. And so I determined now what I would do. I went to my mistress and inquired what was her price for me. She said $1,000. I then told her that I wanted to be free and asked her if she would sell me to be made free. She said she would, and accordingly I arranged with her and with the master of my wife, Mr. Smith, for the latter to take my money and buy and buy of her my freedom, as I could not legally purchase it, and as the laws forbade emancipation, except for meritorious services, namely mine. Lane was able to negotiate with his mistress for his freedom, not simply because she was benevolent, but because he offered her a competitive price, one that she could demand of any buyer if she had chosen to sell him in the slave market instead. The fact that his mistress settled upon the same sum he did implies that she too was attuned to the value of her slaves. And perhaps Lane became privy to this information when he sold her other slaves or while hired out to various individuals in his community. Enslaved people developed a keen understanding of their value in the market, and they sometimes use that information to facilitate their own sale. They conducted such negotiations to find and secure kind masters and to keep their families intact. Enslaved people gleaned significant information about their own value, the particulars of the slave buying process, especially the qualities, skills, and character slave buyers sought in the market, and details about local slaveholding cultures. While being coached by slave traders and examined by potential owners, they also assess the character of the individuals who hope to buy them and acquire the knowledge to shape their own sale. Slave buyers pay particular attention to the sex of the slaves they hope to purchase. And enslaved women possess skills, qualities, and abilities that prospective buyers valued highly. Enslaved people recognized this fact, and they promoted those skills in their efforts to keep their families together, even in the slave market. Formerly enslaved people's testimony suggests that they developed their financial knowledge long before they reached the market, and they used that information to create a very different kind of slave market transaction from the ones white Southerners might have envisioned. They established and negotiated the terms upon which they could purchase and secure their freedom. Drawing upon the same information owners use to calculate the profits of a potential slave sale, the skills, the character, the sex, and appraised market value, enslaved people bought themselves and their loved ones and thereby ensured that they would never have to enter the slave marketplace ever again. These transactions did not always go the way enslaved people hoped, though. However, they came to realize that despite considering every factor that might determine whether their female owners would accept their offers to purchase their liberty, their mistresses could renege on such agreements or reject their proposals outright. An enslaved man named Henry negotiated the terms upon which he would buy his own freedom from his mistress and pay nearly the full amount they agreed upon, but Henry's mistress sold him to a slave dealer anyway. When Dred Scott decided to purchase his freedom and that of his wife and children, he was unable to offer his mistress, Irene Emerson, full payment. He approached her and proposed to give her a down payment and pay the rest in installments. He even secured a reputable co-signer who vouched for him and was willing to ensure that Scott would fulfill his agreement. Emerson rejected his offer, and as the eventual consequence of her decision, the nation throughout 1856 to 1857 watched one of the most important United States Supreme Court cases defining the relationship between race and citizenship unfold because of that. And what's that? The Dred Scott versus United States. I'm going to learn about them too. Yep. Charity Bowery, who resided on the Pembroke Plantation about 3 miles from Edenton, North Carolina, repeatedly tried to buy her children from her mistress. Her mistress not only rejected each of her offers, she later sold 5 of Bowery's children to slave traders. In one instance, Bowery's mistress sent her on an errand that required her to remain away from home for an extensive time. And when she returned, her mistress was counting a heap of bills in her lap. Bowery knew that something was wrong because she saw her daughter crying while she stood behind her mistress's chair as she counted the money. $10, $20, $50. At first, she did not understand the reason for her daughter's tears, but her little girl eventually pointed to Mistress' lap and said, "Brother's money, brother's money." When Bowery asked her mistress whether she had sold yet another one of her 5 children, her mistress proclaimed, "Yes, Charity, and I got a great price for him." By Bowery's estimation, her mistress was a rich woman who rolled in gold. She did not need to sell slaves to sustain her livelihood, nor did she urgently need the money that she gained from their sale. Within the confines of her household, Charity Bowery's mistress thought about selling and finally did sell her slaves to men who traded in human flesh. It was here in the household that Bowery approached her and attempted to negotiate a price at which to buy her children and establish the terms of payment for them. It was also here that this slave-owning woman calculated the value of those human beings and repeatedly rejected offers for their freedom because she thought she could find a better market in which to sell them. White women in the South understood the darkest dimensions of the market and people firsthand, and the transactions that took place in their own homes and among their friends and family equipped them to initiate and finalize their own within and outside formal slave marketplaces. We finished it. We finished chapter 4, and I think we're going to wait on chapter 5. I ain't going to push it. Yeah, I ain't going to push it because probably get in the middle and stop. And then tomorrow we're going to have to read it all over again anyway. Yeah, but I thank y'all. Tomorrow is wet nurse for sale or hire. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's what she this white lady was walking down the street and she seen this good-natured, healthy-looking Negro woman with an infant in her arms. And she asked the woman if she knew of a wet nurse to be hired, and I think she gonna probably end up getting her. But yeah, we just learning, y'all. We learning. Honey, we ain't got no friends out here. We sure don't. And from today, the live that we was on with brother, yeah. I was thinking about it too all day today. Once we do save us and stuff, we're gonna have to reach out and save Africa. Let Africa know what they got to do to save them. Yep, it touched me today. It did. I didn't know all of that. That brother was letting our brother across the seas and stuff know why he was calling us lazy and talking down on us and stuff after all they done did. Oh, honey, I thought it was indentured servants that they had, sold. And yeah, we'll let you get them for a few years and then you got to let them free. So it made me think that, they knew it wasn't going to be like that. They knew slavery was not going to be like that, when they decided to hand over, they other Africans in Africa, other tribes and stuff, whether they were enemies or not, they knew what that slavery was going to be like. So yeah, whoever got it coming, your ass got it coming. Whether it's my sister or my brother, when you get this chastisement, when you get this work, you got it coming. I'm going to get my ass out the way. I ain't going to say nothing. I ain't going to tell brother you being too harsh on them or nothing. Now you got it coming. You got it coming. Everybody finna answer for what's been done to my ancestors. It's it. Yeah, I'm proud of my ancestors. I'm glad they got through to us. We need this. And we just gonna finish up with some gratitude. I ain't gonna try to sing tonight and stuff. But yeah, just keep a little gratitude in your heart. Y'all always keep some gratitude with you. When you grateful for whatever it is, when you grateful, honey, it's got so many benefits for you. I'm gonna look up some more benefits of gratitude too. And I'm gonna add them on this right here or get another one and just put it all on there. But gratitude, y'all, it shields you from negativity. It shields you from negativity. I don't care if you by yourself, if you at home, if you in your car, if you at work, you at church. It don't matter where you at. You at the doctor's office, you shopping. It don't matter. You always keep gratitude with you and on you because you always got evil eyes on you. Thoughts. You somebody always coming at you even when you think they not. So you always keep that gratitude with you because it's going to shield you from that negativity. That negativity going to roll right off of you like water. Gratitude also makes you at least 25% happier. It's up to you to make you happy. Can't nobody else make you happy. And money ain't going to make you happy. All the clothes and name brands and stuff and looking all prim and proper stuff, ain't none of that going to make you happy. Gratitude makes you happy. You the one got the key to make you happy. I'm just saying, you're going to have to give it over to something that's realistic for your happiness. That's why people ain't happy. They looking for everybody else to make them happy. People pass on. People change. People move. Things just don't remain the same. And then there your ass is. You can't find no happiness because you don't know that you are the key to your happiness. I didn't know either. But, now that I do know, I think I get like 55% happier. Because for me, I don't really have no bad days like that. My ancestors have had all them bad days like that. They've had all the bad days and stuff. So, when I'm grateful and stuff, and I always try to be grateful. Even when I forget to think about it and stuff, when I do, I got 2 or 3, 4 things to be grateful for. It's a habit. You got to break it. Them curses and stuff that we done got used to, them norms and stuff, we got to break them and stuff. We just got to break them. It's kind of like, when you pray and you pray over your food every time you eat. Keep gratitude with you like that. Keep a song with you like that. Make it habit. Make it part of your life, your lifestyle. I'm just saying, you got to make this stick with you. Gratitude rewires your brain. It do. You instead of sitting there being in the dumps all the time and stuff, and going back and forth and stuff with your gratitude, you just finding other things to be grateful for. Because it's opening up doors. It's opening up avenues for other things to come to you. Gratitude eliminates stress and it heals you. It improves your sleep. You can sleep like a baby. When you are grateful, you can sleep like a baby, honey. Gratitude boosts self-esteem and performance. It enhances law of attraction. Whatever you're grateful for, more of the same come to you. You don't even know it. You don't know it. When you're grateful, more of the same come to you. And when it do come to you, you're supposed to be more grateful. That right there is confirmation to keep your gratitude coming. It's like when you're riding a bike. If you stop riding the bike, you're going to fall over. Then you got to stick your leg out there and catch yourself. You got to keep that gratitude coming. We got to keep it coming. Gratitude also improves your relationship. Don't nobody want to be with no negative Nancy. Don't nobody want to be with no Karen, no Brad. Yeah, I'm just saying. People want to be with others that's going to inspire them and motivate them. People want to be with somebody that's going to appreciate them. Not always complaining and stuff. I know I come on here with a lot, but I'm different. I'm coming with different, so yeah. But I don't usually be on this, in this feeling like this. It's just because of what the subject is. I think I'm quite pleasant most times, unless you make me cuss your ass out. But most of them, I'm quite pleasant. I am. Most of us are. We got some quirks and stuff to ourselves, and set in our own ways. But it ain't nothing that we can't compromise or work on. I'm just saying for the betterment of us and what we doing, our purpose for being here. And so, we're going to go through the singing real quick, y'all, because, we're going to get us some rest and rejuvenate tonight. I am tired. You tired? Yeah, I can give me a good night's sleep tonight. But how's your body reacts to singing? Y'all, when you singing, not just when you listening to music, because I can listen to music and I feel like I got goosebumps. I listen to Stephanie Mills' Home. Oh, my ancestors. I feel like I got goosebumps and stuff. Yeah, I'll be playing Stephanie Mills shit 6 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I'm just saying, But when you singing the songs, I love my mama's music. I love my mama and my daddy's music. I'm getting used to new music too, like reggae and jazz. I really got into jazz when I watched Bolden. What was that on Netflix? Tubi or one of them. Bolden, Bolden. And it's by Buddy Bolden, my namesake. And he was the father of jazz. Yep, he was the father of jazz. It's an unfortunate story and stuff, but Buddy, they said that he went through some things, and they put him in an asylum for 25 years. Buddy Bolden. That's my namesake stuff. So after him and stuff, I gave jazz another try. Cause when I was little, I was like, oh, this ain't even got no words to it and stuff. I don't even want to listen to that. There ain't no words or nothing. Now I put my own words in jazz. Yeah, when I listen to jazz music and stuff, I'll be putting my own words in. I'm just saying, it's something about singing. Singing. When you sing in joyful, expressive songs, y'all, it nourishes your heart. It balances your emotions and it uplifts your spirit. Not only that, it reaches out to others. It reaches out to others. That's what music do for us. You pick any one of our feel-good songs. Pick any one of Earth, Wind, and Fire, the Commodores. You can walk into any place and start singing LTD, Back in Love Again. I got mixed emotions. It's the way my feelings flow. Somebody gonna think about roller skating. I'm just saying it's a roller skating song. Yeah, it's a dance song and stuff. You get good, you get loose with it and stuff. But it make you feel good. All right, that's all I'm saying. When you singing a song, y'all, it expands your lungs and it improves your oxygen intake. Y'all, we got to start singing. Didn't I just tell y'all we breathing like white folks? We got to start singing so our lungs can get that full capacity of oxygen that we need. For real, I didn't know all these things either. I don't even remember my dreams. Yep, but I know it's something to all of this right here. I'm going to remember my dreams. When I do, I might let y'all know. I finally remember my dreams and stuff because your dreams are significant. They really are, y'all. I'm just saying. I'm learning too. Your liver, when you singing, y'all singing helps regulate emotions like frustration, anger, and stress right on out of your liver because everything accumulating in your liver. I just learned not too long ago, maybe 10 years ago, that all the medicines you take is accumulating. It's accumulating in your liver and stuff. Yep, all the medicines and stuff because you're taking so many. Well, frustration, anger, and stress can accumulate too. So just imagine how filled up that your liver is with all of that. You got to sing some songs. You got to find them songs and say, I'm just saying, go back to the 70s. I love the 70s. I'm a 70s baby. Go back to the 70s, the 60s. If you must. This up-to-date music and stuff, it's going to be tricky for you. I wouldn't advise going past the 80s. I wouldn't. And I got some good music in the 90s too. I love our music. I'm just saying, you want to stay with the music that's going to be really beneficial for you to make this connection. And then, after that, because I could go to Regina Bell or, somebody like that. I could go to Tamia and find a nice song, what's her name? Toni Braxton, and find a nice song that I like and stuff, and I get the same feeling, but it won't be as beneficial as if I go back to my mama's music. Oh, honey, my mom and my daddy's music, my auntie's music. Oh, honey, it touched 2, 3, 4 people in the room. It do. That's what you got. Just try it. Just trying to see. Now I ain't saying go up in some place, and everybody already, somebody ready to fight somebody. You're gonna have to gauge where you at when you do this. I don't want nobody to be in the middle of the lyric and stuff and then some shit done popped off and stuff, It's just real tested right now. But try it. We gotta try these things right here. Your kidneys. Singing can strengthen kidney energy by fostering vocal expression. I didn't know when you singing and you hitting them high notes, because we love to sing. Oh, honey, we will go to town. And when we do, honey, our kidneys is matching it. Our kidneys is matching it. It's something about the music, y'all. I really believe that it's going to be sound that's going to help propel us to wake on up. I do. It's got to be something. It's sound. And that sound could very well be music. Remember how they had all them bells and stuff on the churches and the cathedrals and stuff, but they took them all down. I think they said they were about the war or something, and they needed all of that for bullets and stuff like that. So they took all of them down and stuff, but them bells were significant. Yeah, I didn't know. I thought he was just letting everybody know it's time to come to church. Or like mass. It was time to come to mass. But yeah, they were significant for other reasons too for us. They were. So yeah. I always keep you some gratitude. I always keep a song in your heart. Make you a new playlist. It might take you a few days, a few tries, to go through your playlist and get used to it again. Because, see, we done got acclimated to the new music. Now, I know we done got acclimated to the new music and stuff. Go back and get you some Elder Barge. I'm just saying. I'm just giving some examples. Glenn Jones. I don't know. Go back and get you some good music and stuff. And let it help you. Give yourself a chance for it to resonate again. It might have been a while. It might have been a while, but you gonna feel so good. People that come into contact with you, if you at home listening to your good feel music in your car, whatever, people they finna hear it. They finna hear it, and you gonna see them looking at you, noticing about you and stuff. So yeah, just give yourself time for it. We got to do this. Why not? Yeah, we ain't got nothing else to we ain't got nothing else to lose. This is the end right here. We gotta use everything we got. We sure do, honey. We already know music is ours. It sure is. Everything is ours. Oh, good day. I am Kiara, the map drawer. You always putting music on here. This is beautiful. Sound the trumpet. Oh, Cleo Soul, when I'm in your arms. LTD, love to the world. I know that's right. Yes. Hi, Aura. It's so good to see you. Oh, Grandizer. Who coming for us? Well, honey, they better think about that one right there. Yes, I'm glad you reading this because white women did own it. Yeah, they did. See, we've been under the impression that white women didn't have anything to do with slavery and stuff, or the disciplining, or the buying and the selling of the slaves and stuff. We just see it like I did, like white women were just there. I can imagine, the white woman trying to stand up for Ticey, but then when the master slapped her, that knocked her out. She was faintful for 2 weeks, and that was the end of it for the white women. But that was far from the case. White women was running things. They didn't even let their husbands. They actually went and got laws and decrees that stipulated that their property was theirs. Their slaves was theirs. White women got slaves almost as soon as their ass was born. I mean, sometimes they didn't wait till their 6th birthday. Hell, they gave their ass a slave when they were like 3 months old, 3 years old and shit, The little girl in the chapter 1, the little girl actually told her daddy, went and told her daddy to cut her slave. They gave her a slave, her own slave. And she went and told her dad to cut the slave ears off and buy her another slave. So, yeah, we've just been under the wrong impression. But that's because everybody been keeping it hidden about white women, too. We think all of this other stuff been hidden. Oh, honey, they went real deep. They put some work into it to make sure white women remained pure and pristine and clean and innocent and didn't have nothing to do with this, honey. White women asses was the ones that was controlling this. Yep, they sure was. White women was. I'm just saying, both of them equally. The white man and the white woman. Hell, I don't know which one is worse than the other one, to tell you the truth. Yep, I just know I don't forgive neither one of them. I sure don't, and I want my people to know you probably don't want to spend forever and ever and ever in heaven with these same people. I'm just saying, as far as I'm concerned and stuff, we need to look at somewhere else to spend our forever. It don't make no sense to me. It sure don't. Even if white women had been a little sympathetic and maybe, not like the white men's was and stuff, I can't even say then I would say we going to heaven with them because Cause why you gonna go to heaven with them even if she was on our side? She can't do nothing. She can't do nothing. It just, don't nothing point to going to heaven with these people except for the Bible. Where y'all Bible at? Except for the Bible. That's the only thing that's telling us to go to heaven and be with these people and stuff. And that's because our asses ain't reading what we're supposed to be reading in the Bible. That's because of that. That's why you're so forgiving to white folks and stuff. But All that's finna change because you finna get the good, the bad, the ugly, the savage, and the ravishness. So you can go ahead and see what you need to see. And after then, if you want to ignore it and deny it and reject it and stuff, that's going to be on you. Karma's going to be on you too. When the ancestors and the cosmos and the archangels and the spirit team, when everybody and Mother Gaia open up and kick this motherfucker off the hinges, you better hope you can find yourself to some safety. I'm just saying, you're going to have to find yourself to some safety. And I don't think it's going to be with white folks. White folks either going to use you to their own means and eat you or use you for clothing or something. I don't know, hell. But, yeah, you better think twice about this. That's all I got to say. And I'll see y'all tomorrow. We getting out of here early tonight. I know, right? It's just 2:06. We usually be here like 3 o'clock or some shit. But, I'm just trying to compact this so we don't spend all night and stuff. And all day, but it takes some getting used to. And I'm getting used to it. I'm trying to be more consistent and stuff. I still deal with it too. Because I didn't know it was going to be all of this, but I'm getting you. It's my purpose. It's my purpose. Sometimes when I be like, nah, I don't know if I want to today. I'm just into this right here today. And stuff. And I have to tell myself, shit, it ain't like shit. I can't do that another time. This ain't all day. Some people be on here teaching us all day long. They come on 2, 3, 4 times a day to teach us what we need to know and stuff. So I feel like, just these 2 times, I can come on and do what I got to do and stuff. And then I can relax and relate and release. And now we're going to go rejuvenate. But I love y'all. Peace and power to the people. Oh, Sade, I couldn't love you more. Yes, I think I'm going to play me some music too. But good night. I love you, and I will see you tomorrow. And keep your eyes on the prize. Everybody else is.